Multiplying fractions. Multiplying fractions is taking a fraction and repeatedly adding it over and over and over the same fraction, or adding groups of it. So right now I have a whole number times a fraction. So I'm going to draw a picture to represent this. I have 5, and I'm just drawing it this way just to give you a clear picture so that you can see my 5 whole. And now this says 5 times I have 2/3. So that means each time I have 1, it's broken up into thirds. Okay? Now, 2/3 means that in this one I have 2/3. In this picture I have 2/3. In this picture I have 2/3. Okay, so in every picture I have 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3. And as you can see, I have 2/3 5 times. Now, if I wanted to write 5 as a fraction, I could look at one picture and say, oh, I have 5 firsts times 2/3. Now, mathematically, I could say, oh, 5 times 2 is 10, and 1 times 3 is 3. Now, to show this 10/3 in my fractions down here, I'm going to show you my 10/3. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 thirds. Thirds come from one whole being split into 3 equal parts. So those are 10/3. Now, to simplify this, I can take all my pictures and kind of combine them, put them together. So what that means is, instead of drawing 5 and filling in 2 parts out of every 3 in the 5, I could make a shape, cut it into 3 parts. Since I have 2 colored here, color 2 down here. Since I have 2 more colored here, I color in 2 more, and I just make as I need. So I've filled in 4 so far, and then I have 2 more here. So 1, 2, and then 2 more here. So 1, 2, and then 2 more in the last room. 1, so 1 and 2. So altogether, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 thirds. If we look at this picture not as fractionals but in the whole number, we can see that we have 1 whole shape, 2 whole shapes, 3 whole shapes are colored. So I'll write that as a mixed fraction. 3 whole shapes are colored, and 1/3 of the final shape is colored. So 10 thirds is the same as having 3 whole and 1/3. So that's simplifying it. Now I'm going to show you really quickly how to take a problem and reduce the number. So I want to do the same method with 10 times 1/100th. So I can make 10 a fraction by putting it over 1 and showing that I have one picture in one piece and having 10 pictures of it. And I'm going to multiply that by 1/100th. If I cross multiply, 10 times 1 is 10, and 1 times 100 is 100. So now I have 10 100ths. Reducing a fraction is finding an equivalent fraction that is the smallest amount you can get that can no longer be divided. So in order to do that, you need to find a common factor for both the numerator and denominator. So 10 is my number. I need to find factors, which are numbers I can multiply together to get 10. So that's 1 times 10 is 10. That's 2 times 5 is 10. So I made it a big gap here. And those are the only numbers you can multiply to get 10. But for 100, we have 1 and 100. Because it's even, I know that 2 is going to be a factor. And 2 times 50 gives me 100. 3 does not work. 4 times 25 gives us 100. and then 5 times 20, and then my last number would be 10 times 10. So here are all my factors. What I'm looking for is a common factor between both. I'm looking for the greatest common factor because that's going to give me the smallest reduced fraction. So I can see that 10 is the greatest common factor between my numerator and my denominator. So I'm going to use 10 to actually divide both of these. So 10 hundredths divided by 10 tenths. I'm using this number for both of them because it's a common factor. So 10 divided by 10 means how many groups of 10 can I make out of 10? Well, if I count by 10, I get there with one count. So that leaves me with 1. And if I count by 10s to 100, I can count 10 times. So 1/10 is the reduced fraction. So 10 times 1/100th gives me 1/10. And that's simplified and reduced.